All right. My name is Kelly Hurley. I'm a licensed professional counselor in the state of Arizona. I have been doing this for 2026 will be 21 years. And originally, all of my training in community mental health was in dialectical behavior therapy, which is CBT really. So a lot of cognitive behavioral therapy. So my background is very much behavioral shaping and um, cognitions and that kind of thing. Then I got trained in acceptance and commitment therapy and then started doing EMDR therapy training. So lots of trainings in my backgrounds. But today we're going to focus on dialectical behavior therapy and using those commitment strategies with your clients to get them increasing their commitment to what they said they wanted to do when they came in and you created a treatment plan with them. Not so easy to do. So I will share my slideshow here with you guys. Um, but here we go. So, Marcia borrowed, she borrowed a lot of stuff from a lot of people putting DBT together, noticing classic CBT was not working with the population that was highly suicidal and self-harming. And so she really wanted to start figuring out how to weave this together. CBT is very change oriented, change, 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 change. And she found that clients would either get very angry with her or they would just bounce and just leave and get very frustrated. So she's like, what am I missing? What am I doing? And so she started combining acceptance with change and saying there was a dialectic here. So that was the most fundamental dialectic when you look at dialectic behavior therapy. But one of the things she borrowed was some things from motivational interviewing, some things from further behavioral change. So, what do you do to help someone increase their commitment to something? From motivational interviewing stance, how do I get them talking about change more, thinking about change more? From a behavioral stance, what are the best behavioral strategies to get someone to make a commitment in the first place or stick to a commitment that they made? So we'll talk about a few of those strategies. So commitment is the foundation of really any therapeutic change, whether you're talking EMDR, whether you're talking IFS, internal family systems, whether you're talking ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy. It's all about how do I get and then maintain commitment from my client? How do I notice I've lost commitment from my client? My client's not committed. How do I notice maybe I'm not quite as committed to this? And checking myself as we burn out on some things and we get demotivated because our clients aren't um, keeping up with us. So we're going to explore some evidence-based DBT commitment strategies to help clients move from ambivalence to action, or even if you have them in their preparation stage and action, or if they've slipped back down to being ambivalent, or I don't even know if I want to do this change, right? Because they're going to slide up and down that continuum. We're going to talk about how to effectively use strategies to gain or increase commitment to therapy goals, methods for connecting current commitment to past successes, some behavioral shaping principles for building that commitment, and techniques for just generating hope. Because again, clients will lose hope very quickly, especially when you're working with a highly depressed clientele or highly anxious clientele, and um, establishing sort of that or keeping that hope going. How do I keep them when they start slipping out of hope? And then also establishing meaningful homework. And I kind of change that more to practice when we get to that section because a lot of clients get triggered by the homework word. And so we get ambivalent about assigning things for them to do in between sessions. That gets tough. It was one of the draws that I liked about EMDR therapy, but I still find I need them to practice stuff in between sessions. So, why this matters, research shows that client commitment to therapy predicts the outcome more strongly than just the technique alone. So, how are we doing at maintaining and strengthening that commitment over time? These strategies help bridge the gap between knowing what to do and then actually the client getting out and doing it. So we're going to talk about 8 different strategies that you can do. Some of these might look a little bit like sales techniques, and they are because they work in sales. And so unfortunately, there are times that I feel like a little bit of a salesman, and I hate that. But also, we kind of need to do that. in order to get our clients to really buy in. Those techniques work for a reason. They work psychologically, right? The psychological underpinnings of why sales techniques are taught and told to salespeople. Same reason they work for us in the therapy room. But I can have a really strong reaction to not wanting to be a salesperson and definitely not wanting to come across that way. So making sure I'm still um, aligning with the client and what the client wants and continuing to go back and check on the client and that we're really doing what the client wants to do and not at all what I want to do because I'm not trying to sell anything to get anything for my benefit. So this could be a very triggering statement, but this is in Dr. Marshall Linehan's text. I suspect that many therapeutic failures and commitment that have been laid at the feet of borderline patients, and these are patients that have borderline personality disorder, could more properly be laid at the feet of the therapist. And she would probably say that about herself when she first started this work, and that's why she would say it, because trying to do cognitive behavioral therapy strictly with them and be so change oriented and just really trying to get the client commitment and change, and not understanding and accepting that the life that they live is really, really tough, really did upset a lot of clients, like I said in the beginning, angry or I'm just out of here and I'm going to go find somebody else that can be more understanding. So really learning to work with the back and forth, the commitment, not committed, not accepting, and figuring out how to dance that dance. She uses dance metaphors a lot, and making sure the two partners are working together to get where they said they want to go. So what are we doing to gain commitment? So this involves actively promoting the value of committing to therapy and to specific goals. And I would add, of the clients, not my goals. Okay. Rather than assuming clients understand the importance of engagement, we need to explicitly highlight the benefits and address the costs of not committing to their goal. And I have clients who come in and even the treatment planning process is awful because they just are so wishy-washy. They say something on the phone about what they want to do, and by the time they come in, they've changed their mind and they're not sure, and maybe, but this could be hard, and I don't know. And so we're back to the drawing board is sort of what do you want to commit to? And I do a lot of supervision, and when people are first starting out, this is where they really struggle. How much do I really try to get the client to commit to something, or how do I just leave the treatment plan? Because I have to get one signed. How do I just leave that sort of unspecific and a little bit open? So some of the key components: frame therapy as an investment and an investment in them. This is an investment in your future, an investment in your family, investment in your relationships. Help clients see the time and effort as a worthwhile investment in their own future and how they're going to gain their own goals and make the changes that they do want to see happen. Make the benefits concrete. If I can see it, if I can name it, it's tameable. I can start picturing that. Address the ambivalence directly. And I've done this with a couple of clients. I'm like, it seems like we've gotten a little ambivalent here. And they're like, what do you mean? I didn't mean to get ambivalent. I'm like, no, right? It's not an accusation. I'm like, I'm just noticing part of you wants to and part of you doesn't. If you want to go to IFS, right? There's some ambivalence here. You came in talking strong, and now we're really talking about that. The anxiety comes up, some of that emotion comes up, thoughts get in the way, right? Changing something is going to be hard. This is going to impact my family. I want to please people, so that part of them that's a people pleaser. Emphasize the urgency without pressure. Okay. So how do I both keep a foot on the gas and also not fully apply the brakes, but be ready to slow down and pull off the gas if I need to, right? Just enough without jerking things around. I want just enough pressure and just enough back off, right? How do I do that gently with the client so they get it? Highlight what continues while they wait, right? This is where you are, and it's where you told me you don't want to be. how do we get over to where you do want to go? Not always easy. So a sample script, right? I know committing to working on your anxiety feels really overwhelming. Now we're not just anxious, now we're really anxious and overwhelmed by that. Here's what I can promise you. If you commit to practicing the skills I'm going to teach you, you'll likely see changes within 6 to 8 weeks. You'll be able to go to that coffee shop, and maybe make eye contact with some people. You'll be able to accept an invitation to a party. Maybe you'll even be able to interview for the job you've been saying you want. And so if we practice some of this stuff, we're going to work on what specific concrete goals you said you wanted to be able to do. The question is, what happens if we don't work on this, right? Again, we're always sort of back and forth. Here, let me hold the carrot out for you. This is what you say you want, but then the anxiety hits you. And so now we're back to this, but what's over here? What is you don't want here anymore? What do you not like about here? And is there enough here to motivate you again to keep moving in that direction? So in DBT language, lots of validation. Again, alongside some of that selling to avoid appearing dismissive of their concerns. This is very hard. You do need a lot of support to do this. You've never done this before, right? But you can do this. You can learn a new thing. Connect the commitment to the client's stated values and life goals. Be genuine. And again, avoid oversell. Like, this is not overselling what therapy can realistically provide. Playing the devil's advocate. This one you have to be careful with, but it's been very helpful to me and some of my clients. And it's a very counterintuitive strategy. So it involves arguing against the change, or against whatever the client says they do want to commit to. Because I've had some clients come in and they are gung ho, man. They convinced me like they're already 4 sessions ahead of me, right? They're ready to go. And I've got to like, wait a minute. They're really not looking at the cost of what this is going to cost them. So what are the downsides of this? Where is this going to get hard, right? So we're wanting them to prompt the client to really defend their desire for change. Because I need those when the commitment does start wavering or drops off completely. I need these things to get them motivated again. So this is another way for me to get what is motivating them. Okay. So what's their desire for change, and strengthen their commitment to the process. Not minimize, because really sometimes I feel like when they come in and they're that committed, there is also a large minimization about how hard this is going to be, and that this is not going to be just easy peasy, because otherwise they would have done it by themselves already. So how does devil's advocate work? So you present the argument for not changing lightly, voice the ambivalent part for the client or of the client. So, right? Maybe there's part of you that doesn't want to do this. Okay. And here might be why part of you doesn't want to do it. Highlight the difficulties realistically. So we're going to talk about how hard this is, right, in real terms. Not overemphasizing how hard it is. Don't go too far extending that, and come back, but just enough to really have the client sit there and really consider what this might cost them, or the time it might take to do this. Allow the client to counter. This is what we're really looking for here. We're looking for the client to counter argument with us to, again, still increase that commitment. Let them convince you why they should commit. Okay. So, and again, those are the things you're going to be able to use later on to remind them of their commitment. Watch for any reactants. So is there anything that's getting the client really activated to motivate to prove you wrong? So this is going to help with our behavioral shaping. So it's going to be a really important technique for anybody who's walking that fence line. They really do want to do this, but sometimes they're not coming down firmly on one side. Sometimes they have firmly come down on one side, but I want to mention what's over on the other side of the fence, because at some point they might be up on that fence. Okay. So an example script, I'm thinking maybe we shouldn't work on reducing your substance use right now. You've been using for 10 years. It's such a big part of your social life. I mean, it really helps you relax, have a good time, and honestly, quitting sounds miserable. Plus, you'd have to find new ways to cope with stress. Maybe you're not ready for all that upheaval. I don't know. What do you think? Okay. Get them to fight that other side. Okay. See if they can push on that. When do I use it? With clients that are ambivalent and on the fence about change, but also again, like I said, clients that come in and are like really wanting this change. I'm just double checking if I poke at this a little bit, how fast does that balloon leak? Okay. When you're encountering a repeated yes, but responses as you guys get into more therapy. So this might be something you use really in the beginning of therapy. This might be something you use like at week 6 or 8, and you're noticing they're not doing anything to practice in between. Nothing's really changing with EMDR therapy. Maybe there some changes are going on emotionally, but behavior isn't changing in between sessions. They're not doing anything. So really trying to figure out what's going on and what's making it still tough for them to make changes in real time in their life. So you definitely want to use this after establishing a solid therapeutic rapport. Because if you don't have that therapeutic rapport, they could think like, oh, you don't think I can do this. So definitely need to be careful using this. And again, the caution, avoid with highly vulnerable or highly fragile clients who might take you literally. So you have to know your client when you're using this one. But it can be, I've had this be a really powerful technique once I do have that rapport. Uh, this a foot in the door, door in the face strategy, right? These complementary techniques leverage consistency bias. So Benjamin Franklin, when he was trying to negotiate something in and before like the country had actually been established, it was early on in I think the Confederacy. I'm gonna forget my story. I don't have my notes right in front of me. Sorry, guys. But he needed something from somebody that it was his polar opposite on the other side of an issue. And so he thought about it for a little bit. And so he went to the guy and he knew that the man had a fairly rare book that he really genuinely wanted to borrow and wanted to read. He hadn't read it before. And so he went to the man. He knew he had a very large book collection. He's like, by any chance, do you have XYZ book? And the man said, yes, I do. He's like, would there be any way you would let me borrow that? Because I would really love to read it. Of course, I would let you. And so he gave Benjamin Franklin the book. Benjamin Franklin read the book and returned the book with much gratitude and thankfulness. And he said that man would do anything for me after that. Literally do anything for me. He goes, anytime we're on opposite sides of something, we could have a conversation based on that. Like I like the same books he likes. He returns the books. We have a basis of a friendship. And so therefore we can move things forward together. So anyway, it was very interesting. So reciprocity to build that commitment incrementally or to reframe expectations as we're moving through the process. Okay. So we're trying to get our foot in the door, or we're trying to like, hey, wait a minute, you're asking for too much from me. Okay, wait, I'll back off. I won't ask for that much. So what's the foot in the door technique? So you're going to start with small, easy commitments. So this one I use more when I'm just getting started with therapy with somebody. We're going to do very small, very easy commitments and gradually build to larger ones. Each small yes increases the likelihood of a future commitment. Okay? So, and again, car salesmen love this. I remember when I bought my Toyota Venza, went in and he's like, oh, are you looking for a new car? Yes. He's like, yay, yes, number one. He's like, do you like the color of this car? I'm like, yes, actually, I do like that car. Yes, he's got 2 yeses. It's like, do you like the style of the car? I'm like, yeah, I really. He's like, sit in the car. Do you like it? Yes. He's like, 3 yeses. And he did sell me the car. So, right, what do you do to start small and have somebody moving in a direction? So can you commit to tracking your mood just once tomorrow? Okay. Or have them start tracking one behavior for 2 seconds every day, or can I get you to commit to tracking that for 4 days next week? Not all seven. If you do all seven, that's fine. You can do more, but just 4 days next week. Can you track your mood? Just notice it, write it down at dinner time, or ask the client what's convenient to you, maybe not dinner time. That's it. And then, right, they come back in the next week and they're like, yes, they wrote that down once at dinner time that day. Like, yay, we've got a step in the right direction. Since that went well, could you track it twice this week? Slowly moving them a little bit closer and a little bit closer to what you actually want to do. This is actually shaping behavior. So some of these kind of cross over each other. What is door in the face technique? So once I've gotten to know my clients, sometimes I start switching it up and I ask for a large request that I do expect them to say no, like, oh my God, or to give me that face like, wait, you want me to do what? I'm like, oh, okay, no, wait a minute. How about if we just do this instead? So a more reasonable request. The contrast actually makes the second request feel a little bit more minimal. So would you be willing to practice mindfulness 30 minutes twice a day? Client's like, what? I don't have an hour in my day every day to do mindfulness. You're crazy. Oh, okay, I totally understand. How about 5 minutes once a day? Could you commit to that? Ooh, all of a sudden the client's like, oh yeah, 5 minutes only one time? Sure, of course I have that time. I have that kind of time. Okay. So use foot in the door when you're building new behaviors. Use door in the face when the clients are overwhelmed with a lot of perceived demands. Ensure that all requests are very genuine and clinically meaningful to the client. Why are you having them do this? You are still doing all those things. I'll explain all that. And then celebrate any small commitments enthusiastically, right? Reinforce the engagement with the process of learning and taking on new practices. So then you're going to connect present to prior commitments. So help clients see consistency between what they're committing to now and any other commitments they've ever made to anything else that they honored in the past and they finished, right? So part of getting that strengths-based, part of your assessment questions for their strengths-based stuff, can you tell me something that you committed to in the past, even if it was for 3 months, you were gonna, work out for 20 minutes a day, take a 20-minute walk in your neighborhood for 3 months, and you did it all 3 months, right? Or maybe it goes so far as the client committed to do a half marathon and they did all the training for it and they actually did the half marathon and they feel really proud of themselves about it. So anything, and some clients, especially with the borderline personality disorder population, I have to dig for very tiny prior commitments sometimes, but they're so useful if the clients can see themselves as somebody who, when they say they're going to do something, does follow through and do it. Okay, that builds the trust in themselves and they can see that. So again, that the strategy really activates their self-concept as someone who follows through. So identify any past commitment. Again, sometimes you got to really dig. Find times the client followed through despite some difficulties. Okay, even if they didn't, and this is the hard part, but I didn't do what I committed to perfectly. No, but you committed to the end goal and you got the end goal done. So you have to really help them sort through all their should'ves and could'ves and would'ves, and it would have been so much better if. Highlight the similarities. Draw parallels between then and now. Okay. And then activate their identity. Remind them they are someone who keeps commitments. And again, this kind of stuff can be super helpful when I'm doing EMDR therapy. All of a sudden, I can use that in the middle of phase 4 to remind them of what kind of person they are and client and what kind of strengths they have. Okay. And then link it to their values. Connect both the commitments to the deeper values they hold for themselves, for their family, and the world, really. Okay. So an example script. So I can see that you're hesitating about committing to daily skills practice, but I'm remembering when you told me about going back to finish your GED. You were working 2 jobs. You still showed up to class twice a week for 6 months. You honored that commitment even when you were exhausted. both to work and to doing your GED. This is the same person who's sitting here now. You know how to do hard things when they matter to you. So does this matter to you? Right? We're trying to go back to, we're just double checking. Why this works. It activates consistency in their motivation. People want to see themselves as a consistent person. When I say I'm going to do something, I do it. It builds self-efficacy by highlighting, again, their proven capability. And even with the smallest things, I wish I had a couple small examples in here. Sorry about that. But it reduces that I can't thinking, can tend. Um, if I can't get there, I can't thinking. That's when I kind of flip flop and I go over to a little bit of acceptance and commitment therapy. Let's see how we do things, even though you think you can't. And so we do some experiential exercises and things to get them understanding that even if their thoughts don't line up, that they can start making the commitments that they need. Okay. And that's a different training, but I'll highlight that a little bit here. This is also going to strengthen that therapeutic alliance through genuine acknowledgement of the client's strengths. Like, I know you to be a strong person. It's part of that generating hope too. Strategy 5, freedom to choose. Okay. They totally have freedom of choice in the absence of any other alternatives. Okay. They've tried a lot of other things. I really have no other alternative for you. So I know it's going to feel like you don't have a choice, but you really do have a choice. And one of those choices sometimes is to stop therapy because there's nothing else I can do for you other than to invite you back to doing some of this hard work. And maybe now isn't the right time. Maybe, there's maybe some other things we could do to prep, but I've really done everything I can do to prepare you to do this work. And I'm not sure where else you want to go with this if you still aren't feeling ready and still aren't feeling prepared enough. Okay. So this dialectical strategy balances that emphasizing the client's autonomy. You totally have all the choice here with highlighting natural consequences and limited options. Okay. Both sides of this dialectic, again, strengthen that commitment, right? I would love to tell you that I have a magical option, that I have a magical wand or a magical potion in my closet, and I could give those to you, and that would be how you would get healing. But unfortunately, this is going to require some work. Okay. So again, paradoxically reminding clients they're free not to commit. They don't have to commit to this. This was their choice. They called me. I'm just trying to do what they said they wanted to do. I'm trying to help and coach them to do that, just like any good coach would do that. If you want to learn how to do the shot put, and I'm a really good shot put coach, and you're going to come to me, then we're going to focus on teaching you and getting you really good at the shot put. But I can't help you get to run the 100-meter dash. I'm not good coach at that. So I can't coach you to do that. So what are we working on here? No longer interested in shot put and you want 100-meter dash, then let's find you a really great coach for that. What do you want to do? This is always back to your choice and what your goals are. Okay. Let's see. Yeah. Paradoxically, reminding clients they're free not to commit can increase the commitment by reducing their reactance and honoring their autonomy. Okay, so the script example, you don't have to commit to this. And again, I'm not saying this sarcastically. I'm not saying this without a lot of care. I'm reminding them, right? This is their choice. You get to choose what your goals are and what you're ready for and when you're ready for them. I can't make you practice the skills. I can't even make you show up next week for therapy. Okay, this is completely your choice. I want you to only commit if you genuinely want to work on this, not because you think you should, not because somebody else wants you to work on this, or because I want you to work on this. This is your work. Okay, I had a client come in one time and tell me, I have to learn to drive on the freeway. And I said, okay. I said, great. I said, why do you want to learn to drive on the freeway? And she goes, oh, I don't want to learn how to drive on the freeway. All my family and friends tell me I have to learn how to drive on the freeway. And I said, but you don't want to. And she said, no. And I said, yeah, and it's tough in the city, little devil's advocate. I'm like, it's really tough in the city because you can get anywhere in this city on side streets. This town was developed more than any other large city that I've ever known that you could go everywhere on side streets. You don't really need a freeway. It's only if you leave the greater Phoenix area that you need a freeway. So do you need to go anywhere on the freeway and you drive? No. Okay. She ended therapy. Like, we just had the conversation. I'm like, by the end of it, I was like, do you want to schedule with me again? And she's looking at me. She's like, I said, it's okay if you don't want to. I won't be offended, I promise. And she was like, I said, if you ever want to come back in again, I would love to work with you. And she's like, yeah, no. She didn't come back. So I was like, totally understand, right? We need to know, like, what are you driven to do? Because if it's not strong enough that you should, or there's not something that you want to do with these friends that need you to go on a freeway, you don't want to do this. You just don't, you know? So, and I never said it that clearly, but the choice was out there. So, absence of alternatives help the client recognize that while they have freedom, the realistic alternatives are they can be pretty limited and often less appealing than committing to the change because really it's staying the same most of the time. Do you really want to keep doing life this way? You said that you really don't love living this way. And so again, the only other alternative is to do the hard work. So let's look at your options realistically in the script. You can commit to working on this in therapy. You can try to or you can even try to handle it on your own, or you can continue things as they are. And let's just look at each one of these paths. If you follow it, if you get on the one where you really work it on therapy, this is how this is going to go. If you keep trying this on your own, like what do you think is going to happen? Or, if you just don't make any changes, what's that going to look like? Okay. What seems like the right fit? Or are there any other options I'm not seeing here for what you could do? So really balancing the dialectic of that freedom to choose and absence of any other alternatives that the client wants more that I just can't help them with. I don't do that. So use both strategies in the same conversation. So these things always go together. I don't use one or the other. These are definitely things that I've joined. So avoid any kind of manipulative framing. I am not trying to manipulate anyone here. This is just our way of taking a look and sort of, I usually say, laying our cards on the table for what all of our options that I can see and you can see are. Let's put them all out here. And then help clients do a realistic cost benefit analysis of the alternatives and validate the difficulty of choosing to commit to doing something you've never done before, or starting to live a way you've never really lived before. It's tough. I love this line too. Dr. Linehan admitted that sometimes she would have to go back to the original commitment several times within a single session. Very difficult session. Making the commitment and remaking the commitment and remaking the commitment, even in a 1 hour session of I want to still keep suicide on the table. No, I don't want to keep suicide. Wait, I do want to keep suicide on the table. No, I don't. Right? So that's a hard session when I'm trying to get commitment around self-harm and suicide specifically. Strategy number 6, principles of behavior shaping. And again, this is obviously, it could be a 3-hour training just on this strategy alone. So we're to shape commitments gradually by reinforcing successive approximations. So sometimes you need to get creative. Sometimes you need to sit down with another therapist and sort of think through, like, how do I break this down into some steps and slowly get the client practicing some of the stuff, rather than expecting full commitment immediately. Okay. Reinforce any movement towards a commitment, no matter how small. So, how do you shape somebody? You identify the target. What does full commitment look like? What's my full expectation? And then I'm going to access the current level of where the client is starting from. And then again, I'm going to do reinforcements of any kind of close approximations. If you want a really great book, the book Don't Shoot the Dog by Karen Pryor is helps create great ideas for how to reward behavior and how to punish behavior that you're trying to. I don't recommend the punish behavior, but she puts the options in there just as a compare and contrast. But that rewarding behavior works way better. And so what's that going to look like? And then again, reinforcing any closer and closer approximation to the behavior you're looking for. Gradually raise the criteria, slowly increase expectations as client starts succeeding, and then maintain gains. Don't push too fast and lose any of the previous progress. So we're trying to push just hard enough, but not too hard. Okay, that's hard. You get better with practice as you do it. So what's an example progression? This is a very rough example, but week one, hey, you showed up today, right? This is amazing, right? Especially if they told you they've been to a lot of other therapists and they haven't really stayed with them too long, right? That's all I'm looking for is for you to show up once, right? That is totally commitment right there. I just so appreciate that you attended your appointment. You're here on time. That's great. Week two, you thought about the homework. Oh my gosh, you thought about it. You were thinking about it as you drove in here. That's too fabulous. I love that you thought about it. You didn't do it, but that's okay. We'll get there. Okay. You're engaging, you're thinking about stuff in between our sessions. And that's super fabulous. Week three, you tried the skill. That's amazing. Okay. That's exactly what we're building towards, right? This is too great. Even if the skill didn't work, we're not paying attention to whether or not it worked yet. They tried something. Oh my gosh. Week four, you practiced 3 times this week. Wow, you are really becoming someone who practices skills. I'm not looking for perfection. I don't care whether it worked or not. You tried using skills. This is so great. And I do emphasize, I want to be clear, I emphasize used the skill, not whether or not it quote unquote worked. Okay. Common pitfalls to avoid: expecting too much too soon. Okay. It really does create a failure experience that really does punish any kind of engagement you can get around this stuff. Failing to reinforce small steps. Clients are not going to recognize their own progress. And trust me, I have had to do some sessions after being with somebody for 6 months where I have to go back and dig for teeny tiny small steps in any kind of way to reinforce and review progress with a client. Again, to instill hope in myself and to instill hope in the client. Moving the criteria too quickly, okay? And if it's sometimes not quickly enough, right? This is all about your individual client and how quickly their behaviors shape. If you want examples, watch people who train dogs. Some of the dogs get it. They're so sharp. They're so fast. They get it super quick. And the trainer's surprised, and man, they can move through all their steps of what they do to train dogs to sit or stand or walk or that kind of thing. But there's other dogs, and the dog's like staring off in space, right? Trainer hasn't even figured out what rewards the dogs. And the trainer's looking at the camera going, okay, this is going to take a while, right? This is going to take a few iterations. I've got to go through a few more steps than what I am not. Please hear me carefully. I'm not saying you're training your clients like dogs. But for me, it's just a creative way to think about behavioral shaping. And then, yeah, what do I do to translate that over into human behavior for the client's goals? What do they want? And how do I create a shaping plan to help them get closer and closer to their goal of what they want? Okay. And lastly, using punishment or criticism, it's going to rapidly undermine any commitment building that you have. And so I would highly recommend you avoid those. Okay. Strategy 7, cheerleading and generating hope. Active, genuine cheerleading. And again, even if you're I was never a cheerleader. My sister was a cheerleader in the family. But I have learned to create very genuine cheerleading type sessions of seriously so excited for you and what you've accomplished. Okay, so finding ways that you can really communicate your faith in them in making these changes. Okay, and generating hope that the commitment is then going to lead to the results the client always said that they wanted. Okay, so hope is often the missing ingredient in sustained commitment. So elements of effective cheerleading: express genuine belief. Convey authentic confidence in their capability. Be specific, right? Point to concrete evidence of their strengths and their progress, and then validate any past successes. Remind them of other obstacles or other things that were really hard that they already overcame. Normalize any setbacks, okay? This happens to everybody, right? One of the influencers I like following is a professor out of Duke University, and he teaches the class there on failure. And lesson after lesson of setting up of experiments and having everybody fail at it. And then how do you recover from that? How do you get over that? What does this look like? Okay. So how do you do this? How do you keep trying again, even though, right, something maybe didn't work? Okay. Project positive future. Help them envision success vividly. Okay. What is that success? And maybe even if you're EMDR therapist, right, that is something you do as a resource. What is the future thing you want to achieve? Let's do fast sets of you imagining and picturing that future event happening and getting that really strong inside of you. And then let's do the other work we need to do. So some examples of cheerleading. I've seen you handle impossibly difficult situations. This is hard, but not impossible. You're doing exactly what you need to be doing. This is what change looks like. Okay. The two others, I'm looking at time, noticing I need to speed up a little bit. Again, balancing cheerleading with validation. Okay. Always validate the difficulty before cheerleading. Okay. Especially if this is hard still and you're in the earlier stages. Okay. So it's going to be, this is hard and I know you can do it. Very difficult. Be authentic. Clients, especially clients with BPD, they're very emotionally sensitive. They will smell you coming from a mile away if you bring them false cheerfulness. Susie Sunshine, they hate it. It just really undermines your credibility and the trust between the two of you. Match the intensity to the client's state. So there's times where I like want to come out of the gate and I'm looking at that, I'm like, yeah, I can't go that hard, right? I gotta bring it back down and I gotta just, cheerlead at a much calmer level, okay? Because they're in a really bad spot, but it's still cheerleading, okay? Um, and then address hopelessness directly when it's present, okay? I'm going to hold the hope for both of us, even if you can't hold any of the hope right now, okay? But we're going to do what we can to get you back on track and start feeling that hope for your future again. Strategy number 8, agreeing on homework. This is the part where I'm like, clients always hate homework, especially if they didn't do great in school. So again, use the word sparingly depending on your client. I really try to emphasize more practice because this needs to get into be sort of a way of life for you. So homework just does extend the commitment beyond just the therapy hour, provides the opportunity to practice these new behaviors. How homework is framed and agreed upon significantly impacts whether or not the client's going to follow through. Okay. So again, collaborate, do not assign. What do you want to do for homework this week? Okay. And at first, this may be really hard to get them in the habit of doing this. And that's where you just start small, right? Little foot in the door. Okay. Link to session content. Here are, if they really can't do it, here are 3 ideas I have, but only pick one, right? Small. And here's a couple of ideas, maybe only 2 ideas, right? I'm going to start really small and just give them 2 to choose from. And which one do you want to do? Okay. Be specific and concrete. Vague homework rarely gets completed. I also follow this up with which day are you going to do it by? What hour? How long will you spend on it? Right? I want you to spend 5 minutes by this day, and so sometimes I do maybe give the assignment early on, but I do still try to collaborate with them. I try to get that out of them and get them to tell me what day they think they'll be able to do this by, unless it's something I really want them to do a few different days of the week. And then which days of the week are you going to do this? Which makes most sense. Pull up your calendar. Let's look at your calendar. Which days makes the most sense for you to be able to do this? Obtain explicit commitment. Will you do this? Yes, I will, is what I'm trying to hear from them. Because if you look at motivational interviewing language, I will is the strongest change language you can get out of a person. So the more you can get them to say, I will, or I'll try, yeah, you got no commitment. Okay. So, what do you need to do to get the I will? Problem solving barriers. Identify and address any obstacles in advance. Please leave yourself enough time in the session to notice that there's going to be obstacles. What are you going to do to overcome those and do this anyway? And then frame it as an experiment. Okay. Reduce the pressure by just, this is a learning opportunity, which is again why I try to drop the homework, the whole homework thing. So, how might the homework agreement progress? What would be helpful to practice this week based on what we talked about today? Oh, maybe the mindfulness thing. Okay, so let's get specific. How many times do you want to practice mindfulness? Now, I would pause and get, right, which days, what time? I mean, that's a lot of questions in that therapist one. So I would kind of uh, speed the or spread those out. So I have a client, maybe Monday, Wednesday, Friday evening. How long do you think for each time? Okay, 5 minutes. Okay, so 3 times this week, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, 5 minutes each in the evening. What might get in the way? What do you want to do to remember? And then, really key question, are you genuinely willing to commit to this, or should we adjust this in any way? Um, So, always, always, always follow up on homework, reinforce the behavior of doing what they said they were going to do. If you ignore this and drop the ball on that, that's not great. Okay. It signals how important it is that they do this. Reinforcement, reinforce the completion enthusiastically. And again, if they did it 3 times a week, 3 times that week, and each time 5 minutes, oh my gosh, big celebration. Okay. Again, to their appropriate emotional level. If it's not completed, non-judgmentally, no accusation, notice what barriers came up, what got in the way, what stopped you from doing what you intended to do. I know you intended to do it. What got in the way of you doing it? Adjust the homework collaboratively rather than abandoning them. Give them another time to try again. We've gone over what got in the way. We've maybe brainstormed how to then do it, and then reassign that same thing again to get them to do it. And then frame incomplete homework as valuable information about barriers, not failure. Okay. So these strategies are most powerful when you use them flexibly and in combination. Different clients, different moments calls for different approaches. So it's us also practicing any of these strategies and combining them. Um, you need to assess where they are in their commitment. So there's just no commitment at all. The client's ambivalent. There's really weak commitment, strong but inconsistent. So some ideas of what to do if any of those cases happen. And again, so is any questions? Are we doing okay? Okay. So if there's a client, maybe a 28-year-old with depression, inconsistent attendance, ambivalent about medication and therapy, right? This is session 1 through 4, how to maybe increase their commitment to their attendance of the session and a little bit addressing some of the medication stuff. Okay. Essential principles, okay? Actively cultivate commitment. Different strategies work for different clients at different times. Small commitments build to larger ones throughout the reinforcement. Balance that really good validation with that hope. Doing collaborative homework is going to be best, and genuine belief in the client's capacity. Okay. So my challenge, choose one strategy to use this week, or choose, 2 strategies to try with a couple different clients. Notice your natural tendencies, which ones you already use, which ones you avoid, and maybe you need to practice that one. Okay. Track any of your homework completion and seek consultation when commitment strategies aren't working. Okay. These are my resources, my information. All right.
Thank you, Kelly. That was amazing. And I was just realizing how much I do not assign homework in my work. I feel like I had a therapist who sent me home with a new book recommendation after every session, and I am not a book reader. And so I just feel, I kind of had this I'm not going to assign homework posture, and you've inspired me to reshape that. I don't need to assign a full book to them, but I like your question of based on what we talked about today, what do you want to practice? And really emphasizing what they do outside the session is really significant to what change they can experience in the session too. Yeah, I also know you have an EMDR DBT training coming up in the new year. Is that right?
No, I just finished it on December 6th.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
Hopefully it'll be up on the website, but yeah, so EMDR professional training is the host that training, and I've got two different four-hour trainings on combining EMDR therapy and using DBT skills really to get people ready and prepared and doing that phase two preparation work for doing the trauma work later. So thank you. Yeah.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's a great blend. And if I'm remembering right, Kelly, that's a training that counts for AMDRIA credit. So if someone is, working towards certification or getting recertified, that is a course that they could take. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes. Yes. And yeah, for most CEUs, if you need that for licensing and
yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, all that.
totally. Cool. Maho, Carly, any burning questions for Kelly? Thoughts? Anything stood out to you?
No, just thank you so much. And I feel very similar to Ellie. So the homework, I love those questions. It's like based on what we talked about and just those clear next steps. So thank you so much. This was really helpful.
Good.
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah, I hopped in late, but that was great. For what I was here for. Yeah, some really good reminders. So,
I know it's the easy stuff we all learned in school, but it goes right out the window as we start try to get fancy. I know for me, it's
yeah.
Yeah.
good for me to put this together. So
Well, thank you so much, Kelly, for the time you put in putting it together and sharing it with us. And I'm off to a session, so I hope you all have a great rest of your day and happy holidays.
all
Thank
right.
you. You
You
too.
too.
See ya.